From TRICHOMES.com, I'm Jarod Duggins, and this is the Careers in Cannabis podcast. On this show, we will be talking with staffing agencies, cannabis companies, and seasoned traditional market executives in order to obtain a better grasp of the current employment climate and what we might be able to expect of the burgeoning cannabis industry. On today's episode, we are joined by Matt Kuchera, founder of VetPivot. VetPivot is a podcast and a platform that was created in order to aid veterans in their transition out of the military into a civilian existence. Here at TRICHOMES, veterans hold a very special place in our heart, and while Memorial Day is about remembering those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for what they believe in, today's show is about recognizing the heroes that remain here with us and how we as the cannabis community can support the men and women that fought for our freedoms. So, if you're a veteran and you're looking for a job, this episode of Careers in Cannabis is for you. And without further ado, here's Matt Kuchera of VetPivot. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And, before we start getting too deep into why you're here and what we're going to be speaking about concerns of VetPivot, is how are you doing personally? How's it being held down? Where are you quarantining and what's that looking like?
Yeah, I'm here in southern New Jersey on a little property of just around 3 acres and having a good time, spending my non-working time, which is not much, but throwing the kids out in the yard and having a good time with them. And it's nice, it's not too bad. I actually like being at home.
Fantastic. Well, 3 acres, it sounds like you've got some social distancing built into your property there.
That's right. Yeah, it's fun. I always wanted to have more land. So when I got out of the Air Force, I found a place where I could spread out a little bit and have a little bit of peace and quiet, if you will. I can't, I don't see my neighbors on either side. It's tree-lined property, so it's been really nice.
Nice. You mentioned the Air Force, and actually that brings segue to why you're here on the show with us. And ultimately, after you left the Air Force, you entered the traditional markets, but you also became the founder of VetPivot. What is VetPivot, and what brought you to needing a reason for it?
Yeah, VetPivot is a podcast. Obviously, it's a platform, though, more than a podcast, where a community of veterans can get together and talk about transition, talk about leaving the military, what resources are available to you. So what the podcast provides is a reference point, a voice and face behind the platform and why it exists. But it also gives veterans who have made the transition, kind of like learning from your older brother or sister, learn from my mistakes, learn from, do as I say, not as I do type deal, is out the window. And now it's more about, hey, come with me. Let me show you the way. Do what I did. It worked for me in this industry. So VetPivot allows us to highlight veterans who have been successful in their transitions out of the military and put points of emphasis on the struggle areas that they had during their time in transition and provide insight as to how veterans going through a transition now in their life can avoid some of those pitfalls.
And what a time to be having you on, because essentially today is a day in the week of Memorial Day week and an observance of the sacrifices made.
Right.
When it comes down to why this conversation is relevant, cannabis and the military or the federal government or whatnot isn't always synonymous. But in my opinion, number one, the conversation surrounding PTSD and cannabis as a relevant medication is obviously prevalent and something we'll probably get into in a little bit. But, the reason we have the opportunity to do what we're doing here in America is because of the sacrifices made of those that you serve surrounding that. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what Memorial Day means to you?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Memorial Day is about remembrance. And in other countries, they have their own version of Memorial Day and they call it Remembrance Day. It's about remembering the folks who, pay the ultimate sacrifice. They make the ultimate, the ultimate gesture of service to their country and its principles. So, we stand for freedom, for liberty, for justice for all. That's important. Those are important principles of what it means to be American. And yeah, we get a day off of work, and it's a day off to reflect, to pay homage to those that did give their life, to the mothers and the fathers who let their sons and daughters serve, and to the service members who served alongside these brave men and women who gave all, right? So it's important to keep that in perspective. Now, I think as a veteran, it's difficult, right? Because you want to celebrate the day, because you want to celebrate the life of the person that you served alongside. And at the same time, you're reminded that they're not there with you, and that's difficult. So you're kind of stuck in this middle ground of, this is a somber, sobering type day, but it's also a day where I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to serve alongside such a great American.
Somewhat bittersweet, but within the context of your answer, it leads segue over to why this conversation is so important at this time period, because the ultimate sacrifices made to this point have been made by people who didn't get a chance to come back. But your show and your focus on the people who did get a chance to come back and what they're faced with making that transition into normal life. And right now, we're discussing unemployment in general, careers in cannabis. And previous to this, we had spoken a little bit, and there's some astonishing numbers surrounding the veteran population and the unemployment within those ranks right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think, it's important to highlight some of the progress that we made and some of the ground that we've given up. So unemployment as a whole for the entire United States was on a downward trend. There was a very healthy job market out there for interested applicants and people looking to make changes in the industry that they serve in. And what that meant for veterans in particular is we saw ourselves under 3% for the first time in decades. And really, we're just celebrating that in February, March. And then COVID hit, and we've seen across the board in all demographics the number for unemployment rise. And for veterans, it's gotten to the point where if you're a post 9/11 veteran, you were around like 2.8% unemployment. Now you're looking at close to 14% unemployment, which is just staggering. How we've given up so much traction and undone so much progress that we've made in the area of veteran unemployment. So it's sad in that sense, in that regard.
Most definitely is. Well, that's why we're here talking about it, is to bring it to light. And in doing this series, I've had a chance to talk to numerous recruiters and people in position to do the hiring at certain companies. And I'm seeing a lot of people in the recruiting category come with military backgrounds, and found that to be pretty interesting. And right now, the cannabis industry itself is hiring. I know that a lot of the larger companies out there have some pretty decent policies in regards to honoring the vets and having some people aboard that have served and making sure that they get equal representation within the company.
Yeah.
Like you said, and referring back to the numbers of the unemployment and being up to 14%, another characteristic of this particular time period of which we're doing this podcast is that it's May. May happens to be Mental Health Month. With a lot of people, especially surrounding the military, losing their job, that can't be helping the mental health and the already known about, let's call it, post-traumatic stress disorders and different things that trouble our warriors after they come home. How is the veteran unemployment and mental health equating right now to the conversations you're having over at VetPivot?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, there's always the emphasis on mental health for veterans when we have a statistic of 22 veterans per day on average will take their own life. It's a very scary thought out there that there could be veterans that are feeling even more isolated than they did before. So, on a mental health standpoint, what I would say is in some of the conversations that I've been having with guests and just, potential guests is it's about finding your mission and leading in three different areas. So, with Vet Pivot, we talk about leading yourself individually, leading yourself. So the enemy tries really hard to kill us. Don't make their job easier by doing it for them. Would be point number one. So lead yourself and really focus on your mindset and your own mental health. If that means you have to go get help, that's what leaders do. They find the resources that they need to be successful. So lead yourself, lead your family, whatever family looks like for you. If you don't have kids and a wife or husband, then whatever your family is. If you have parents, siblings, friends, close relatives, whatever family is for you, you need to lead your family and lead in your family. Find ways to be present in their lives and to develop relationships that are even deeper than they are today. And then finally, leading in your community. And when you lead in your community, you're really going to find out that some of those characteristics that you loved about the military, the sense of belonging, the tribe that you were part of, you'll find that coming back to you. And when I say lead in your community, it doesn't have to be like of course, it could be like a homeowners association. It could be a little league team. It could be an online community if you're part of one, like a Vet Pivot. Being a leader within those circles socially is going to be critical to your mental health, and that all ties into what your mission is. It'll help you find your purpose. It'll align with your vision for who you want to be, and it'll drive you towards a mission that's going to make you feel fulfilled and really set you up for positive mental health.
Excellent advice. And, within that, I'll turn into the employment sector again, or the employment conversation again, is if that mission becomes employment or being in search of a career opportunity within cannabis, that's, again, what we're here to talk about today. So in your eyes, for your listeners and some of the listeners of Vet Pivot who might catch on to this, what's the relevance between Vet Pivot and the cannabis job market? Do you see an opportunity for the people you talk to on day-to-day basis? Do you see an interest within that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that cannabis presents this opportunity for veterans in a couple different ways. One, it's this miracle plant that gives us a chance to access care that we don't have access to within traditional means, meaning the VA, who wants to throw, a cocktail of prescription medications at you without any regard as to how they play nice together or don't play nice together. So in that regard, the cannabis industry is exciting to veterans because it is gaining traction and momentum. It is driving towards becoming more mainstream when it comes to government agencies, even though there's still a lot of work to do. And there are good folks that are putting that work in to make sure that it's accepted and tolerated. It's exciting in that regard. And then two, being closer to that industry, seeing it for the opportunity as a growth market is important for veterans to find places. And you're looking for areas where, if you want to get into agriculture, you talk about veterans, myself included. I wanted to find some land and I wanted to find some peace and quiet, and get into a place where I had, when the sun's up, make hay. I have plenty of land to toil with and make hay. So there's a lot of veterans, a high percentage of veterans that are getting out that want to go back into rural areas and get into agriculture. This presents opportunity to create a crop that is cash flow positive and in demand. So and then aside from that, there are leadership opportunities. There's growth potential within, business development. There's growth potential in marketing. There's all kinds of your traditional office roles that you can take within companies that are in the cannabis industry as well. And they're hiring because they need good people. They need people that are going to be dedicated, loyal employees that believe in the mission and want to advance it.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And well, and this mission and could be part of a larger picture. And ultimately what you said is, by and large, acceptance of this as a medicine hasn't happened in any way, shape, or form for veterans or through the VA at all. You could say that getting involved with the right company could be even participating in your own future medicine, future of recreational leisure, future of ability to medicate yourself in a way that we know has less side effects than everything else they're trying to do and trying to give us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's 100% right.
Yeah. So definitely, I think that's a great point because right now I don't think anyone can provide the insight that the medical community is going to be looking for better than the people who have developed the anecdotal evidence over the years by utilizing cannabis within the means and the vehicles of which were presented at that point in time. And medical discoveries and science are only going to make those better. It's just, hey, why don't you start off in this direction? Because essentially we're telling you it works. The more veterans we can get lining up in an organized fashion, the more they're going to be heard. And boy, do they deserve to be heard.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's well said. And you talk about a loyal group of people, but they're also critical thinkers and really good problem solvers. I mean, we are very, very used to solving problems with fewer resources than what the average employee would request in order to get a task done. So it's not uncommon for a veteran to look at something analytically, come up with a solution that a company has not yet thought of, and bring that to the table where it becomes a very viable option to solve whatever business problem you're facing.
You brought up a huge point, and that analytical ability comes from structure that, by and large, a lot of participants in the cannabis industry are, let's say, developing. Right. We're borrowing from other industries and doing that type of thing. But when it comes down to experiential based, is I do believe a lot of the people who come from military backgrounds have, like you said, the ability to put structure to the mission and develop the best way to do it, analyze it, and come up with efficiencies along the way. So that's a fantastic point, Matt. And, I don't know who's listening right now. We're developing our listeners, and for the vets out there possibly catching this show, I hope that they're listening to ways that are positive and they can take positives from this. And for the other side of it, the business professionals and possibly other recruiters listening to this show, is I hope they take from this that if they're not entertaining veterans as a source of good, hardworking employees and or management or even C-level executives based upon their structure abilities and that kind of stuff, they're missing out. I hope if nothing else got through today, it's that our military needs to keep their head up, develop a new mission based upon everybody being up in the air on this chaos, and find out what it means to them to continue forward in this new norm. And ultimately that there could be a home in cannabis for them if they hadn't considered it before. You do have the podcast and we're listening to one, but how can they get on to Vet Pivot? Where can they find Vet Pivot?
Yeah, so we're available every major platform where podcasts are offered. Our two primary areas where we gather our listeners, typically iTunes and Spotify. But you can find us on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Stitcher, you name it. It's Vet Pivot. If you see the logo, it is an A10 warthog swooping in over the words Vet Pivot. It's a great show. It's conversational based. So if I can plug it just for a second, it's conversational based. It's not a structured standard. I'm going to ask the same 10 questions every episode. Each time it's about emphasizing the guest, their story, their triumph over their own adversity and transition blockers, and how they've reached success, and how we can give the advice that veterans need today to avoid those same issues. We're also available on social media, wherever you look, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all at Vet Pivot. Also Twitter at Vet Pivot. So go follow and become a listener. It's not just I've gotten tons of feedback. It's not just for veterans. I've had lots of people who have no connection to service whatsoever that have gotten a lot of really good advice and gold nuggets of wisdom out of Vet Pivot episodes. So please go give it a listen. Tell your friends about it.
Sounds like a great spot to go get some fresh ideas when you hit a spot and you don't have any. I've been there personally in life, and every now and then you need a spark or an idea or a push to get you going. And hearing about how other people are being successful sometimes is just that spark that you need. So, Matt, I salute, and sorry if that sounds corny coming from a civilian. Salute what you're doing and your efforts over there at Vet Pivot. I really admire your efforts and what you're doing for the people who have defended our right to do what we're doing. So thanks for joining us. Matt Kuchera, founder of Vet Pivot. I hope to have you back soon.
Awesome. Yeah, anytime. Thank you very much.
You can follow our series, Careers in Cannabis, as well as more great shows like this one at TRICHOMES.com. If you're a member of the cannabis community and you have a story you want to share with us, please reach out. You can reach the show via emailing careersincannabis@TRICHOMES.com. Please take a second to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. It really helps others find the show. You can also join in the discussion with industry insiders by visiting trichomes.com and following us on all social media. For trichomes.com, I'm Jarod Duggins. Be well, and thank you for listening.